Well, welcome everyone, and I'm delighted to be here. Jennifer and I were almost classmates. She was young 1 year after me, so we developed our friendship in ministerial school. Before I start my transformational message every week, I tell a joke. Is that okay with you guys? Yeah. All right. So God said, Adam, I want you to do something for me. Adam said, gladly, Lord. What do you want me to do? Now, of course, we don't have new thought jokes yet. We still have like the God in the sky and the God as a person. So until we create them, we have to tell it the old way. God said, go down into that valley. Adam said, well, what's a valley? God explained to him. Then God said, cross the river. And Adam said, what's a river? God explained that to him and then said, go over the hill. And Adam said, so God explained to Adam what a hill was. He told Adam, on the other side of the hill, you'll find a cave. Adam said, what's a cave? And God said, in the cave, you'll find a woman. Adam said, what's a woman? So God explained that to him too. Then God said, I want you to reproduce. Adam said, how do I do that? God first said under his breath, geez. And then, just like everything else, God explained that to Adam as well. So Adam goes down into the valley, across the river, over into the hill, into the cave, and finds the woman. And then about 5 minutes later, he's back. God, his patience wearing thin now, and a little bit angry, said, what is it now? And Adam said, what's a headache? And so naturally, since I tell a joke every week, I get tons of jokes, that people want me to tell, which is great. Some of which I can tell and some, of course, I can't. So in everything, give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. From 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18. It was Paul, the Apostle Paul, who wrote this. And he was the one. He got thrown in jail, of course, for many reasons. But for this one, for healing the girl who told fortunes. So Paul and his colleagues were stripped and beaten, and then they were incarcerated. Yet in solitary confinement, in prison, with their feet in stocks, Paul and his friends were singing and praising God. In other words, even in the midst of darkness and dampness and the dankness of the dungeon, they were thanking God. Can you imagine thanking someone for cutting you off in traffic? For standing in the express line with those 42 items? For your neighbor's dog doing its you-know-what on your lawn? And those are minor complaints compared to what Paul and his other teachers were going through. So was it Paul who set the first foundation of Unity's first principle? God is in everything. And can we actually learn, because it would be retraining on our parts, retraining our minds, reframing things, can we learn to be grateful for it all? For polluted air? For beautiful flowers? For the smell of garbage on a hot summer's day? For the vibrant colors of autumn? For health challenges? For sounds of children, those newborns? Isn't that wonderful? Can we learn to be grateful for it all? As we leave our work with the power of release in November, a very powerful power, we embark on a new one. The power of this month is the power of life. And that life is that life of God in us, that Christ's self that we are so much of. So this is that first Sunday in Advent. And once again, as New Thought students, we go through a process where we're asked to really up-level our Christ consciousness. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Colossians 1st chapter, verse 27 is said to be one of the greatest teachings. Christ in you, the hope of glory. That means no matter what we're going through in life, no matter where we are, the Christ in us is that hope of glory. It's that response from the Christ within us. So maybe in November you had the opportunity to go through the museum rooms of your mind, looking at some of the old artifacts, the old beliefs, and maybe really realizing that those no longer suited you and you were able to release those. And perhaps maybe you didn't get a chance, but it's still November, isn't it? We got one more day. Because November kind of went through like a flash, didn't it? It was like here and then it was gone. And so maybe today, in that last day of November, you can take some time to yourself, maybe for a walk or maybe just in the quiet, and ask yourself what you'd really like to release before we embark on this Advent season, the season where we really bring forth to a greater place that Christ consciousness. Remember the words of Emerson, "Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities have crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow's a new day. You shall begin it serenely and with too high a spirit to be encumbered by your old nonsense." So we have to forgive ourselves for any blunders. We did what we could at the time. That's where we were in consciousness. Maybe we were hungry or tired or something else. And so we move through and we move ahead. So my hope for you and for me as we go through this next month is that we see it through the eyes of a child. You know, kids let go and they move on easily, don't they? Yeah. They don't want to ruin the play time for the next 10 minutes. They don't want to hold on to it. And all of us know that whatever is happening, and of course the news events, they challenge us, but whatever is happening for a reason. Hope as we work through this week is to let our mind be enlightened. What is the pearl that we can get from this current irritant in our life? That's our work. And all we have to do is stop, breathe, ask, listen. I'm preaching to the choir. You all know this stuff. That's all we have to do, because we have all the answers. We have all the inner wisdom. It's just connecting. And that's really all it takes. So I have a story this morning about a brother, and he says, "I envy Kevin. My brother Kevin thinks God lives under his bed. At least that's what I've heard him say one night. He was praying out loud in his dark bedroom, and he stopped to listen. 'God, are you there?' and said, 'Where are you?' 'Oh, I see, under the bed.' I giggled softly and tiptoed to my own room. Kevin's unique perspectives are often a source of amusement to our family. But that night, something else lingered long after the humor. I realized for the first time the very different world Kevin lives in. He was born 30 years ago, mentally disabled, and apart from his 6'2" frame, there are a few ways in which he is an adult. He reasons and communicates with the capabilities of a 7-year-old, and he will probably always believe that God lives under his bed, that Santa Claus fills the space under our tree every year, and airplanes stay up in the sky because angels carry them. I remember wondering if Kevin realizes he is different. Is he ever dissatisfied with his monotonous life? Up before dawn each day, off to work at a workshop for the disabled, home to walk our Cocker Spaniel, return to eat his favorite macaroni and cheese for dinner, and later to bed. The only variation in the entire scheme is laundry, which he hovers over excitedly over the washing machine like a mother with her newborn child. He does not seem dissatisfied. He goes out to the bus every morning at 7:05, eager for a simple day of work. He wrings his hands excitedly as the water boils for his macaroni and cheese. He stays up late twice a week to gather our dirty laundry for next day's laundry chores. And Saturdays, oh, the bliss of Saturdays. That's the day my dad takes Kevin to the airport to have a soft drink, watch the planes land, and speculate loudly on the destination of each passenger. That one's going to Chicago, Kevin says as he claps his hands. His anticipation for Saturdays is so great he can hardly sleep Friday nights. And so goes his world of daily rituals and weekend field trips. He doesn't know what it means to be discontent. His life is simple. He'll never know the entanglements of wealth or power, and he doesn't care what brand of clothing he wears or what kind of food he eats. His needs have always been met, and he never worries that one day they may not be. His hands are diligent. Kevin is never so happy as when he's working. When he unloads the dishwasher or vacuums the carpet, his heart is completely into it, and he doesn't shrink from a job. Once he begins it, he doesn't leave a job until it's finished. And when his tasks are done, Kevin knows how to relax. He's not obsessed with his work or the work of others. His heart is pure. He still believes everyone tells the truth. Promises must be kept. And when you're wrong, you apologize instead of argue. Free from pride and unconcerned with appearances, Kevin is not afraid to cry when he's hurt, angry, or sorry. He's always transparent, always sincere, and he trusts God. Not confined by intellectual reasoning, when he comes to God, he comes as a child. Kevin seems to know God, to really be friends with God in a way that's difficult for an educated person to grasp. God seems to be his closest companion. His brother writes, "In my moments of doubt and frustration with my Christianity, I envy the security Kevin has in his simple faith. It is then that I am most willing to admit that he has some divine knowledge that rises above my mortal questions. It is then that I realize that perhaps he is not the one with the handicap. I am. My obligations, my fear, my pride, my circumstances, they all become disabilities when I do not trust them to God's care. Who knows if Kevin comprehends things I can never learn? After all, he spent his whole life in that kind of innocence, praying after dark and soaking up the goodness and mercy and love of God. And one day, when all the mysteries of heaven are opened and we're all amazed at how close God really is to our hearts, I'll realize that God heard the simple prayers of a boy who believed that God lives under his bed. Kevin won't be surprised at all. God is that close. Has anybody ever heard of Father Beatty Griffiths? Very interesting. Many years ago, he's a Benedictine priest, and there was a small community over in India that needed a little funding, and so they wrote 50 or 100 letters over to the U.S., and they asked churches to help fund them, get them going. And Father Beatty was the only one who responded. So year after year, they sent this little spiritual community in India some money. And then one year they said to Father Beatty, "Why don't you come over and see what your donations have done?" So Father Beatty goes over there. And Father Beatty never left India. He just fell in love with the divine feminine. It took him 3 years to shed his Western clothes. And then one day, about 87, Father Beatty had a stroke. He thought it was his time to go, so he said his prayers and he prepared for death. He realized that the whole left side of his logical, reasoning, intellectual mind was dead. He knew that somehow. But the thing about it was, he came back to life. And he did an interview with Andrew Harvey. And he said of all the 60, 70 years of his life that he spent learning and studying about God, when his intellectual, when his rational mind died, then he experienced God. Then he knew God. He became like a child and he just trusted. So I wonder for us, I was driving here yesterday and I saw a marquee outside some kind of church. And it said, when you die, you meet God. And I just was very grateful at that point that I believed differently, because we're all a part of God and we have that divine essence in us, and God is that close. So I invite you this season in Advent, this December, where we celebrate the month, the power of life, that Christ life within us, to just figure out how in some small few minutes of the day, whether it's driving to work or doing the dishes or putting the kids to bed or whatever that is to see how you can nourish that spirit within you. Because as we set these intentions, that's all it takes, is setting really that intention, being determined, being self-disciplined about those 5 or 10 or 15 minutes that we spend. And what will happen is that Christ consciousness will be up-leveled in you this season of Advent. I see it already. Namaste.